Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Gas prices are up and you're seeing some stories about it in the media, but what's interesting is how the press cover rising gas prices. If you look carefully, it's pretty clear they're not that interested in the topic. They just don't find it compelling. In fact, they may be a little bored by it. And that shouldn't surprise you. There's no greater divide in American life than the gap between people who care about what gas costs and the people who don't care. It's a cultural divide, obviously, a chasm of class economics and geography, those who take Uber versus those who drive their own cars. But it's also deeper than that. On some level, the divide is about usefulness. Split the country into two groups: people who worry about the price of gasoline and people who worry about the fact that gasoline is still legal. And ask yourself, which of these groups is more important to the functioning of the United States? Let's see. On one side, you've got lawyers, HR directors, executives at climate change nonprofits, gender studies administrators, finance moguls, brain-dead senators, columnists for the Atlantic magazine, highly paid Netflix producers like Michelle and Barack Obama, and yes, primetime cable news anchors. This would be the grifter class. They do little, but they benefit greatly. As a practical matter, they are useless. They have no skills. Most of the time, they're a drain on the actual economy and poison to the culture. The rest of us might be happier and more prosperous if they became truck drivers or moved to Paraguay. That's true, and on some level, everyone knows it's true. And because it is true, that's why these very same people spend so much time screaming about how essential they are, because it's so obvious that they aren't. Things worked perfectly well before we had HR departments. On the other side of the gas price divide, you have everybody else. And this group includes the people who possess about 95% of the relevant skills you would need to keep a civilization going. You lose these people, and it's the dark ages, literally dark. Your power grid shuts down. As it happens, these are the very people who've noticed and winced as the price of filling a tank has shot skyward over the past year. These are the people being hurt by rising gas prices, the ones who deserve it the least. The most galling part of all of it is none of this is an accident. America has more than enough energy to keep gas prices low. So why is this happening? Well, it's being done on purpose by the party that hates gasoline. Gas engines are bad for the climate, Democrats tell us. They appear to believe that, but they also understand something else about gas. Cars mean autonomy. If you've got a car, you can go wherever you want. The central planners cannot control you. They hate that. At this point, they can't express a thought like that out loud because it's too scary. So instead, they call you a racist. Watch.
For years, you all have continued to promote fossil fuels despite knowing that promoting them means promoting environmental racism and violence in Black and brown communities. You all are still promoting and selling fossil fuels that are killing millions of people. This is a striking example of white supremacy.
So fossil fuels are a, quote, striking example of white supremacy. That's the latest thought bubble from prominent Democratic Party intellectual Congresswoman Cori Bush of St. Louis. You got to wonder what the world's many non-white OPEC countries think of that. They must be thoroughly confused by it. But Cori Bush doesn't know it. She's never heard of OPEC. She just prattles on, thoughtless little moron that she is, denouncing this or that as a striking example of white supremacy. That's what she does. What's interesting is that not a single prominent Democrat will tell Cori Bush to shut up and sit down. They're not allowed to do that. So over time, Cori Bush's ravings become official government policy. Why shouldn't we shut down energy pipelines in the middle of an energy crisis? Pipelines are racist. And having done that, which in fact they are now doing at this moment, why wouldn't we shut down the energy companies themselves? If energy is racist, so are the corporations that sell it. So burn it all down and make way for utopia. That's what they're concluding. Here's a top Biden nominee, someone who could very soon supervise every financial institution in the country, explaining that we should root for the destruction of the most robust economic sector in the United States. Watch.
For certain troubled industries and firms that are in transitioning. And here what I'm thinking about is primarily coal industry and oil and gas industry. A lot of the smaller players in that industry are going to probably go bankrupt in short order. At least we want them to go bankrupt if we want to tackle climate change, right?
We should want them to go bankrupt, quote. Who's she talking about? Well, she's talking about the people who make it possible to have, say, airplanes, asphalt, automobiles, farm equipment, fertilizer, steel, plastics, golf balls, antihistamines, aspirin, soap, electricity. Virtually every other feature of modern civilization comes from fossil fuels. But let's just shut them all down and then applaud as we do. The future will be much better then, we promise. That's what the Democratic Party is as of tonight. So you can see very clearly why they're not too concerned by the fact you're going broke filling up your car. Going broke is the whole point of the exercise. Here's Joe Biden's new Commerce Secretary, Gina Raimondo.
If you were still governor of Rhode Island, I understand you're not, would you be hoping or asking for the president to open up the Strategic Petroleum Reserve?
Again, I think it's premature to say. What I would be saying to the president is I would just ask him to keep doing what he's doing.
Yeah, just keep doing what you're doing, Joe Biden. Crushing the middle class with completely out of control energy costs. If we can hike gas by another $20 a tank or make it impossible for you to heat your home in January, we'll have won. A desperate population will welcome whatever we give them next. That's what they're thinking. Watch the president's flack from last month before she disappeared explain that, shut up, stop your whining. We've got bigger problems than your household budget.
The climate crisis, one of the greatest national security crises the president sees. A number of other world leaders agree on that front. Certainly, we all want to keep gasoline prices low, but the threat of the crisis, the climate crisis, certainly can't wait any longer.
Yeah, we just can't wait any longer, says the single most entitled person in the District of Columbia. Nothing's more important than, quote, the climate crisis. And of course she's saying that because it's easy for her to say. But what if you wanted to drive your kids to school for less than $5 a gallon? What if you just realized you actually can't take that family trip to Yellowstone next summer because you can't afford it anymore? Well, to self-righteous co-eds like Jen Psaki, these are not real concerns. They're just more bitching from a peasant class that doesn't understand what's good for them. In the end, they'll accept it. They'll have to. Just as they'll have to accept inflation as a permanent feature of the American economy, which, by the way, newsflash, it is. Yes, inflation's real. It's not transitory like they told us. Here's one way to describe what that means. According to the official numbers, unless you got a 6.2% pay raise this year, and you probably didn't, but let's say you did, you lost money. Thanks to inflation, you got a pay cut, because that's how much inflation has risen. You see all around you, price of hamburger up by nearly $1. A pound of bacon goes from $5.70 to $7, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, across every class of consumer products. And real estate is far worse than that. Try to buy a house, try to buy a used car. Bottom line, economists have not measured inflation like what we're seeing now in decades. So the question is, why is it happening? Lots of obfuscation on that question, but it's pretty obvious. Like rising energy prices, inflation is not an act of God. We have inflation because the geniuses in charge have put too much money into circulation. It is that simple. The more US dollars floating around, the less those dollars are worth. That's the whole story. Anyone can understand it. Larry Summers is the former Treasury Secretary. He spelled it out back in February when Joe Biden's last $1 trillion spending bill passed. Watch.
I think there's a real possibility that within the year, we're going to be dealing with the most serious incipient inflation problem that we have faced in the last 40 years.
That doesn't sound good. They wanted to ignore him, but you can't. It's Larry Summers. He ran Harvard. He's a loyal Democrat. You can't just blow him off. So instead, the White House attacked him. Joe Biden's chief economic advisor, Jared Bernstein, declared that Larry Summers was, quote, flat out wrong. So with that settled, flat out wrong. The administration just kept printing money. How much? Well, according to numbers from the Federal Reserve, between March of 2020 and last month, the total amount of US dollars increased by 36%. 36%. It's hard to find a precedent for that. A moment ago, we told you that the official inflation rate was just over 6%, 6.2. But if the money supply has increased by 36%, can that really be true? Do the math. No, of course it's not true. And every sophisticated person knows that it's not true. The actual inflation rate is much, much higher than 6.2%. Why do you think so many rich people are buying cryptocurrency? Because they know what inflation means. Why are equities up so high? Inflation. And by the way, not to wreck your night, we'll stop after this, but consider one last number. If you count just the US dollars in active circulation and sitting in checking accounts, our money supply has increased by 336% in the last year and a half. Is that sustainable? Come on. No, it's not. Look at the effects of it. Inflation is not spread evenly across the country. Notice the coastal areas on the map. That's where the Biden voters live. Those areas are yellow. That means less inflation for them. But the middle of the country, bright red. That means costs are going up much faster there. That means the people who can least afford it are getting hit the hardest. What's that look like in political terms? Well, this is what it looks like. A total of 23 states have official inflation rates over 6.5%. Of those 23, 18 of them voted for Donald Trump in the last election. Wonder why the White House isn't worried about inflation? That's why. Here's Joe Biden's chief of staff explaining that actually, if we want to beat inflation, what we really need to do is print a lot more money.
The Build Back Better bill is the best answer we have to bring those costs down. By the way, it also does it without adding a penny to the federal debt. It's fully paid for, and without raising a penny of taxes on families making less than $400,000 a year.
Has there ever been a stupider person? That's a metaphysical question. We can't answer it within the confines of a cable news show. But just assess the text of what he said. The administration boasts it will spend $1.75 trillion and will do so without raising taxes. How do you do that? It sounds like magic. Well, here's how they do it. They print the money out of nothing. So that means $1.75 trillion new dollars dumped into the system. That new money dilutes the value of every existing dollar, very much including the dollars you own because you earned them. That's called inflation. Can it go on forever? Well, there's a limit to how long any government can do this. At some point, maybe sooner than you think, the currency collapses. The Build Back Better people will have wrecked the US dollar, and that will be their crowning achievement.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.